Hi guys, it's Ben Heath from Lead Guru, and in this video, I'm going to give you 6 reasons why your Facebook ads audience is too expensive. I'm also going to then show you how you go about fixing those issues. If you're seeing really high CPMs, I'm going to get into that more in a minute, that's an issue, and it's an issue that can often be solved. That's what we're going to be covering in this video. Before we get into it, I just want to very quickly ask you to hit that like button. That'd be much appreciated and really help me out. Okay, so I'm in one of our ad accounts, and I've sorted these campaigns by CPM, by cost per 1,000 impressions. Now, that's the metric that we're basically always going to use when we're assessing how expensive an audience is to reach. How much does it cost you to get 1,000 views on your ads when targeting that audience, okay? And you can see from this column here that the cost per 1,000 impressions varies massively. Right at the top here, we've got 35, almost 36 pound CPM. That's really quite expensive, all the way down to £5.50, £6.38, that sort of thing, which is much, well, far less expensive, okay? And I do need to very quickly state that your CPM is going to be affected significantly by where you're advertising and what you're advertising. Certain industries have higher CPMs, certain locations. The US is going to cost a lot more per CPM on a CPM basis than advertising in India, for example. That's just a fact, nothing you can do about that. So working out what a high CPM is for you is going to be somewhat relative, and you're going to have to look at potentially how your campaigns have performed historically versus the new ones. Maybe you know other people in the industry you can compare with, that sort of thing. But we often see Facebook advertisers coming up with CPMs, often in the US, which is probably the most expensive market to advertise in, that's 60, 70, even $80 CPMs. I mean, these are monstrously high, in my opinion, CPMs. They're a problem, that's a problem, there are things you can do about it. Okay, so why might your CPM be much higher than it should be? First reason is because your audience is too small. If your audience is too small, Facebook has a lot less flexibility around who they can advertise to. So you're basically forcing it. You're having to bid against the advertiser and having to advertise to those people, because Facebook's going, okay, well, those people are really expensive right now. They can't do this, right? They can't go, those people are really expensive right now, but those over there are far less expensive. Let's go with those over there. They can't do that because they don't have as much flexibility. It also means that you rack up multiple impressions per person. You get a higher frequency number. So once people start to see your ads again and again, they become disinterested. Facebook doesn't like that. They charge you more as an advertiser in order to advertise to people multiple times than just the once. And you end up with higher CPM. So the simple answer there is increase your audience size. And I'll include a link in the video description below to a video all about Facebook ads audience size, what I recommend. It's not very long, strongly recommend you go through it. Okay, so that's reason number 1. Reason number 2 is that there's tons of competition for whoever you're advertising to. I often talk to advertisers that are like, oh, we only want to reach really high net worth individuals. And you look at their product and maybe it's a little bit on the expensive side, but you think, but there's a lot of people that don't have to be really high net worth individuals to afford this and might be interested. Or maybe they just decide to spend a large proportion of their budget on this particular thing because that's what they're really into. And, you know, if you just try and reach the top 1% or even smaller fractions within that, that audience is incredibly expensive to reach. Why? Because that audience has a lot of money. It's in demand with a lot of other advertisers. There are other examples, but that's probably the most common. What can you do about it? Potentially try advertising to other people. Don't just get fixated on, we only have to reach this specific small audience that we know is interested or know is right at the top end of the market. There may be other people that would happily buy your products and services that don't necessarily fit into that criteria. And this can often work in conjunction with the too small audiences. Test broadening things out, right? Test advertising to other audiences. The worst you'll find out is that it doesn't work, which might cost you a bit of money, but it's absolutely worth it, because the potential upside of going, oh, actually, we thought we only wanted to advertise to the top 1% of net worth individuals. But actually, if we advertise to the top 15 or 20%, those people can afford our product and are happily buying it. And that's amazing because that gives us so much more audience to advertise to. That gives us a much lower CPM and much more longevity on your Facebook ad campaigns, all that sort of stuff. So don't get fixated necessarily on a specific audience that may have a ton, and I mean a ton, of competition, because there are audiences that are just bombarded. How can you work around that? How can you target other audiences? Worth thinking about. Reason number 3 is seasonality, okay? Are your CPMs much higher right now because this is not the best time of year to be advertising your products and services. People aren't that interested. Facebook is picking up on those signals and they're charging you more to reach the same amount of people. This happens to a lot more businesses than people think. How do you go about addressing that? I wouldn't recommend that there are times of years when, well, I would rarely recommend not advertising for certain times of the years. But what we will often do, once we've established that there is high degree of seasonality within an industry, is we might spend significantly less during certain parts of the year. Like if you know that people aren't as interested in your business through the winter months, perhaps you drop your budgets down to 15, 20, 25% of what they usually are for those months. Keep things ticking along, keep those warm audiences being advertised to and things like that. And then you take that budget that you've saved during the 3-4 winter months, let's say, and you absolutely smash it out the park in the summer by spending a lot more and loading budget into months where you know your results are likely to be much better. You will see this in your CPM data. Obviously, you'll see it in your cost per conversion, things like that. But if you're thinking, why did our audience get expensive all of a sudden? You go, yeah, well, we're selling something that there's more demand through the summer months than there is in the winter months. And maybe that's why. Yes, that can be why. It's not just going to affect your cost per conversion. It'll also affect your CPM. By weighting budget more towards the better times of the year, you'll have much better cost per conversion. You will also find that when you average it out over the year, your audience is cheaper to advertise to, even though this is the exact same people. One of the nuances of how Facebook advertising works. Reason number 4 for overly high CPMs and an aggressively expensive Facebook ads audience is, are you restricting where you're putting your ads too much? One of the classic cases here is just advertising on Instagram. Now, new data has come out recently that might be quite shocking to some people. For those of us that live and breathe this, it's not, but Instagram is now more expensive than Facebook to advertise on. For the CPM number that we've been talking about in this whole video, to get 1,000 impressions on, say, Instagram feed is going to cost you a good chunk more, 30, maybe 35% more than it is on Facebook. So are you just advertising on Instagram because you think that's where your audience is, or just advertising on, say, Instagram stories because you think that's the best placement? Try opening it out. Try opening up other locations, particularly adding Facebook back into the mix if you've previously written it off. That might really help reduce your CPMs, make your Facebook ads audience much less expensive, and give you better results. Reason number 5 is that much in the same way that you don't want to necessarily get fixated on advertising to a small group of people from a targeting standpoint, you also don't want to get fixated on just advertising in certain locations. I've talked to a lot of advertisers that are like, oh, we know that our best customers come from cities like LA or New York and things like that. You go, yeah, okay, I understand that. But those are the most expensive places to advertise to in the world. And Facebook is sophisticated enough to work out that someone living in, rural Wisconsin might be really interested in the product that you offer, and advertising to that person is going to cost you a fraction of what it costs for you to advertise to someone in LA. And that might be a much better result for your business. So if you haven't already tested it and you're seeing really high CPMs, really expensive Facebook ads audiences, definitely try opening in other geographical locations, particularly ones that aren't big cities or less expensive states. There are far less expensive states than, for example, California and New York in the US. You can even expand to other countries. We've worked with this on lots of clients where they're only advertising in, say, the US, Canada, UK, Australia, and we go, well, we could advertise to other European countries, maybe other Asian countries. There's still going to be demand for your products, but they're going to sell a lot better. Now, this will only work for certain businesses, because I'm not saying you should advertise out of where you can deliver your product or service. That might be a real local area, in which case that's fine, but something to keep in mind. And last but not least, reason number 6 is that your ads are boring. Facebook really care about the user experience on Facebook and Instagram. If your ads are boring, if they're not engaging, Facebook punishes advertisers with higher CPMs. They're like, yeah, you can advertise that, but our audience doesn't like it. We don't want them to be bored or annoyed by your ads on the platform. Therefore, you can advertise, but we're going to charge you more for it. Conversely, if your ads are really engaging, the creative is grabbing people, there's lots of people watching it, you get rewarded as an advertiser with lower CPMs. Facebook's going, okay, well, look, we know you're running an ad, but we can see that people love this. We really want to put things in front of people that, in front of our users that people love. That's fantastic. This is I'm super happy about this. Let's go ahead and reward you with lower CPMs. So People think that CPMs and expensive Facebook ads audiences is all about the audience itself, and often it is about the audience, but it can also be about the ads. Those engagement signals are really, really important. So if perhaps you've been going through the other reasons and you've gone like, no, I'm advertising to broad audiences, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I've done all the things recommended, what's going on? Well, it could well be your ads. Are they just boring? No one cares. No one wants to look at them. Not no one, that's probably too harsh, but you know what I mean. They're not engaging enough. Focus on that. More dynamic creative, slideshows, videos, get people's attention. That could help reduce your CPM, reduce your the cost of advertising to the same people, the same Facebook ads audience, and help you improve your results. Okay, so before you go, something I want to quickly mention, and that's our Facebook and Instagram advertising services. So my company, Lead Guru, is a specialist Facebook and Instagram ads agency. We create, manage, and optimize Facebook and Instagram ad campaigns for our clients. If you have a budget of $3K per month or more, and you're interested in finding out more about our service, what you should do is book a free call with one of my team members. There's a link in the video description below. No obligation call. You can find out more about us. We can find out more about you, see if we'd be a good fit, and hopefully we get a chance to work together. Thanks for watching, guys. Please hit that thumbs up button. Comment below to let me know if you've got questions. Comment below with feedback. Was this useful, etc., etc. And I'll talk to you soon.